The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 25th webinar on the Secret Doctrine, which marks the beginning of our third year together. We're in Stanza 3 on our third year. So we should make it through the Secret Doctrine by 2025, the 7th year of the Forerunner, years of the Forerunner. It's good synchronicity. This and all subsequent sessions will be available on makara.us under the subheading Moria Federation Webinars. Okay, as is our habit, we'll start by checking in on HPB and Colonel Olcott. This month, we find them in the southern town of Tirunelveli, India. So there's 3 segments to this. We could get 3 readers.
Okay, we're going to start with Lynn and then go to Scott and then Carrie. So be prepared, guys. Lynn, go ahead, please.
At the Tirunelveli station, there was a crowd. 2,000 people at least sweltered together in and about the building to get a glimpse of us. There were all the town notables in gala costume and the huge elephants from the temple, with their mighty brows painted with caste marks, which were made to raise their trunks and salute us with a roar, and priests with broad and high foreheads holding before us in benediction polished platters of brass, holding betel leaves, red powder, and burning lumps of camphor, and the presentation of the notabilities, of whom each gave us 2 limes with courtly salutations, and the clangor of huge horns and long, slim trumpets, or shawms, blown lustily amid the din of a dozen tom-toms. Then came a great procession headed by the elephants trumpeting, the nobility and officials on foot escorting our palanquins, and my Bob in front of us carrying a brass jar of water on his head, a tuft of betel leaves emerging from the narrow mouth of the jar, and the banners and flags, large and small, each bearing some quaint device, waved all up and down the line, the 2,000 following and shouting joyfully.
Thanks, Lynn.
The omens, too, they said, were propitious. A frightened pullet flew over my head in the right direction. An alikana, or vividly blue bird, was seen in an adjacent field on our right. A lizard chirped over our house porch the proper number of times. So everybody was happy in the glowing sunshine, and the town had on its holiday look. They took us to our quarters, an upstairs house with the upper and lower veranda, whose portico and whole facade were decked out with flags and greenery. The street was packed with people for hours. We held a sort of durbar, or reception, at which there were speeches, replies, written addresses, betel, more garlands, limes, etc. In the evening, I initiated 14 new candidates and organized the branch in due form. Then something to eat and bed, and for me, dreamless sleep until morning. My throat was so sore that I looked forward to with some apprehension to the work I should have for it that day and the next. However, I soon had something to divert my thoughts from my physical disability, for the Morning Post brought me a letter from the principal of the local Hindu college, which let me into the wiles of the gentle missionary. My correspondent said that, although he called himself a Christian, he did not approve of some of the measures adopted in the interest of missionary propaganda, and enclosed for my information a copy of a pamphlet which had been circulated through the town the day before, to prejudice the community against us, the copies being distributed by hand by the servants of the missionaries, with the verbal message that they were sent, quote, with the compliments of the secretary of the Tirunelveli Theosophical Society, unquote.
Thanks, Scott.
In violation of the law which requires that the names of the printer and publisher shall appear on every printed work, this pamphlet revealed neither. Its contents were reprints of two meanly slanderous articles against us from a London and a New York paper. The occasion to expose the dishonorable tactics of the enemy was so inviting that before beginning my lecture that afternoon at the Hindu College, I called attention to the pamphlet and denounced its authors in suitable terms. The blow recoiled upon the heads of our would-be assassins, and our popularity was doubled. This is the sort of warfare that we have had to encounter throughout the whole period of our Indian work, and almost invariably the offenders have been Protestant missionaries.
Thanks, Carrie. So you'll see here, I've highlighted Colonel Olcott there in the middle of all these monks. It's from that time. This is actually a shot of Blavatsky during this trip, those palm leaves behind her. This is 1881, which is when they were doing this work. Okay, on to the SD. Last month we finished the A section of HPB's commentary on verse 7 of stanza 3. So let's jump right into section B, which references, he shines forth as the sun. He is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The Ika is Chatur, 4. And Chatur takes to itself 3. And the union produces the Sapta, 7. In whom are the 7 which become the Tridasha, the thrice, 10. The hosts and the multitudes. By the way, I'm now using an indigo font to set off the verse from the commentary. I like to keep it up as a reference so you'll know what section we're reading about. Hopefully this will make it a bit easier for you to find your place when asked to read. For instance, here, whoever reads will start at B, the dragon of wisdom, ... So could we get a reader for this, please?
The dragon of wisdom is the one, the Eka, Sanskrit, or Saka. It is curious that Jehovah's name in Hebrew should also be one, Echod. His name is Echod, say the rabbins. The philologists ought to decide which of the two is derived from the other, linguistically and symbolically. Surely not the Sanskrit. The one and the dragon are expressions used by the ancients in connection with their respective logoi. Yehovah, esoterically as Elohim, is also the serpent or dragon that tempted Eve, and the dragon is an old glyph for astral light, primordial principle, which is the wisdom of chaos.
Yes, thank you, Antonella. I think I recognize your voice.
Italian accent.
Yeah, great. You read well. So any thoughts or questions on this passage? We can see the common root of Ika or Eka and Ekad in the first syllable of these two names. Jehovah is both the divine androgyne, Yah means male, Hova, female, and it also means the one in all, or the multitude, symbolized by the Elohim. HBB says in this part of the commentary that it's esoterically the Elohim. So esoterically, Jehovah is identified with the serpent or dragon in the Garden of Eden, who revealed, like Lucifer and Prometheus, awareness of the duality of good and evil through the fire of mind. Of course, it would never do for the masses to have good and evil in one being, so Lucifer was demoted to the lower regions. Chaos is the cosmic storehouse of all the latent seeds from former manvantaras. Thus, the wisdom of chaos, that's the last phrase there, can be seen as simply the wisdom held in the unseen realms from one point of view, here termed the astral light, as well as the potential wisdom that unfolds during a manvantar or becomes available on the path of return. The meaning and boundaries of the astral light seem to change from one use of the term to the next in the SD. The most specific definition I could find is this one from the Theosophical Glossary. Could we get a reader to read this piece? I see a hand. BL, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was on. I was going to ask Tara to read this, but first she has a question for you. How many dragons are there, and what color ray is he?
Did you ask how many dragons are there?
Yes.
And what ray is he? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, and what ray is, by he you mean the dragon?
Tara, I've unmuted you, but you are self-muted. So if you would like to, there you go.
Hello. Yes, I'm just wondering. I've been reading the esoteric psychology, and I was just thinking that there was different rays had different beings that represented them. So I'm just wondering if the dragon had a different ray that he represents or lives on or lives within.
Right. Well, each of the planetary loci are considered dragons on their own ray, dragons of wisdom on their own ray, and then their amalgam is the Solar Logos, who itself is a great dragon. So in terms of how many dragons, it's a stage of consciousness. And so eventually, everybody in this webinar will become a dragon. If you're not in this webinar, you don't have a chance. No, just kidding. It's a stage of becoming, of awareness. A dragon of wisdom is a very high level, beyond the level of, for instance, a master of wisdom. It's the level of a logi, or one who is an avatar of a race, that type of thing. And there's other uses of this term dragon. And in fact, we're going to be exploring serpents and dragons, which are in some ways interchangeable terms throughout this webinar. She really gets into it in a little bit. So I think you'll get a lot more understanding around this term as we move along. Any other questions?
Hold on. Okay, you're self-muted again. And I muted you for a minute there. There you go. Yes, there is one more question, but Tara, do you want to go ahead and read this first, and then we'll get to Julia's question?
Yes. Okay. The astral light is that which mirrors the three higher planes of consciousness and is above the lower or terrestrial plane. Therefore, it does not extend beyond the fourth plane, where one may say that Akasa begins. There is one great difference between the astral light and the Akasa, which must be remembered. The latter is eternal, the former is periodic. The astral light changes not only with the Mahamanvatars, but also with every sub-period and planetary cycle around OTG.
Yeah, that's the online Theosophical Glossary. Okay, though a less specific delineation of the higher realms than found in modern theosophy, this definition gives us, some guidelines. Nonetheless, we'll find that the term astral light is often used in the SD to describe any and or all of the higher planes. But here, HPB, it's the only place I've actually found where she breaks it out and describes it as being that which is below the fourth subplane. So Okay.
And then Julia has her hand up. Go ahead, please, Julia.
Go ahead.
Julia? Well,
Okay, let's go on.
all right.
So any thoughts or questions about this segment? About the Dragon of Wisdom, the One, the Ika, the Saka, Jehovah, and the Astral Light. Okay. Up next, could we get a reader for this?
Catherine, can you read that for us, please? You're self-muted. Martha, can you read that for us, please?
Okay. Archaic philosophy.
That's right.
Recognizing neither good nor evil as a fundamental or independent power, but starting from the absolute all, that is universal perfection eternally, traced both through the course of natural evolution to pure light, condensing gradually into form, hence becoming matter or evil. It was left with the early and ignorant Christian fathers to degrade the philosophical and highly scientific idea of this emblem, the dragon, into the absurd superstition called the devil. They took it from the later Zoroastrians, who saw devils or the evil in the Hindu devas, and the word evil thus became, by a double transmutation, evil, in every tongue, diabolos, diabla, diabolo, tufo.
Any thoughts or questions about this segment? The first statement reminds us that the universal perfection of the absolute is beyond, entirely beyond the duality of good and evil. The latter is here identified with the form aspect. So, and DK teaches us too that evil is nothing more than orientation towards the form aspect. Okay. Oh yeah, this sentence on the Zoroastrians. Whenever I see a reference to the Zoroastrians, I think of Joseph Campbell, who gleefully recited, "Give me that old-time religion. Let's dance with Zarathustra like we used to." Okay, next up, could we get a reader for this paragraph, please?
Carrie, can you read that for us, please?
But the pagans have always shown a philosophical discrimination in their symbols. The primitive symbol of the serpent symbolized divine wisdom and perfection, and had always stood for psychical regeneration and immortality. Hence Hermes, calling the serpent the most spiritual of all beings. Moses initiated in the wisdom of Hermes, following suit in Genesis. The Gnostics' serpent with the 7 vowels over its head being the emblem of the 7 hierarchies of the septenary or planetary creators. Hence also the Hindu serpent Sesha or Ananta, the infinite, a name of Vishnu, whose first vahan or vehicle on the primordial waters is this serpent.
Thanks, Carrie. Thoughts or questions about this segment? Here's Hermes with his caduceus, detailed and highlighted. Moses with his brass serpent. The Gnostics' serpent with the 7-voweled verbum, right, which stands for the 7 potencies or the 7 planetary logi. And the Hindu serpents, Sesha and Ananta. those are actually interchangeable names, bearing Vishnu above the primordial waters. Because the serpent is inherently dual, it represents all that can be known in the realms of both spirit and matter. As the seven-headed Ananta, it fixes a point of tension in chaos from which Vishnu can emanate Brahma, the creator. And with this verse is Oyaohu the younger. And as Fohat, this serpent power propels the downward involutional arc, impressing matter with spirit by means of the knowledge of good and evil, and thus moving creation from pure being to the dualism of spirit matter. This is what the Garden of Eden stands for, right? That place of pure being into the dualism of the outer world, which is revealed through the knowledge of good and evil, right? So let's look at the footnote, which references the term serpent. Could we get a reader for just the footnote itself?
Scott, can you read that for us, please?
Like the logoi and the hierarchy of powers, however, the serpents have to be distinguished one from the other. Sesha or Ananta, the couch of Vishnu, is an allegorical abstraction symbolizing infinite time in space, which contains the germ and throws off periodically the efflorescence of this germ, the manifested universe. Whereas the Gnostic Ophis contained the same triple symbolism in its 7 vowels as the 1, 3, and 7-syllabled Oyahu of the archaic doctrine, that is, the one unmanifested logos, the second manifested, the triangle concreting into the quaternary or tetragrammaton, and the rays of the latter on the material plane.
Thanks, Scott. Thoughts or questions about anything in this footnote? The Ophis and Ananta represent seemingly different uses of the serpent as symbols. She's pointing out those differences here. But when we read the Theosophical Glossary's entry on Ophis, we see that this difference is really a matter of emphasis, because all serpents hold these same symbolic potencies, right? In actual potencies, it's the serpent that is the symbol. So can we get a reader for this entry, please?
Okay. Julia, I see your hand up again. Can you read this for us, please? And do you have a question?
I'll attempt to read it. The hand keeps going up by itself, but here we go. Ophis, Greek, serpent, used by the Gnostic Ophites for Chnupis, the agathodiamon, good serpent, emblem of wisdom and of the unending cycles of time, and constituting with Enoia, the logos. Its opposite pole is Ophiomorphos, serpent form from Ophis, serpent, and morph, form. The two are represented in the zodiac by Virgo Scorpio. The serpent before his fall was Ophis Christos, and after his fall was Ophiomorphos Christos. The Roman Catholic Church identified Ophiomorphos with Michael, and the Gnostics identified him with Jehovah.
Thank you. You navigated some of those terms quite well.
Thank you.
So we see that both Ananta and Ophis rule the, quote, unending cycles of time. Like Fohat, Ananta, the couch of Vishnu, as infinite time and space, represents a bridge between pure spirit and manifested periodicity. I like the older versions of this image because the rendering of the abstract water of space surrounding Ananta suggests primordial chaos, the natural element for Vishnu, the second logos of the Hindu pantheon. As I mentioned before, the little figure floating above Vishnu's navel is Brahma, Oyaohu the Younger, introduced in verse 7, who will preside over one of an infinite series of manvantaras, or periods of manifestation. The female massaging Vishnu's feet is, by whatever name, Adi Shakti, the highest Shakti, from which all goddesses emerge. She represents the enlightened form aspect, ever in service to the God within. Okay, on to the next paragraph. Did anybody have any questions about the Ophis here? About these ideas? Okay. So, yes, could we get a reader for this?
Villa, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so, yet they all made a difference between the good and the bad serpent, the astrolites of the Kabbalists, between the former, the embodiment of divine wisdom in the region of the spiritual, and the latter, evil on the plane of matter. Jesus accepted the serpent as a synonym of wisdom, and this formed part of his teaching. Be ye wise as serpents, he says. In the beginning, before mother became father-mother, the fiery dragon moved in the infinitudes alone. Book of Sarparachni. The Aitareya Brahmana caused the earth Sarparachni, the serpent queen, and the mother of all that moves. Before our globe became egg-shaped, and the universe also, a long trail of cosmic dust or fire mist moved and writhed like a serpent in space.
Thank you. Nice Sanskrit, by the way. So, thoughts or questions? The dual serpent, which is described here, is found in many, if not all, ancient philosophies, invariably representing spirit and matter, sometimes depicted as male and female, as in this centerpiece. We also have an important statement on chronology in this paragraph. In the beginning, before mother became father-mother, the fiery dragon moved in the infinitudes alone. This is Oyaohu the Elder from verse 2 and 3, the unmanifest vital principle whose breath brought forth the father-mother from the bosom of the homogeneous mother chaos. So let's look at the footnote here. It's short, so I'll read it, which references the term astral light. Quote, the astral light, or the ether of the ancient pagans, for the name of astral light is quite modern, is spirit matter. Beginning with the pure spiritual plane, it becomes grosser as it descends until it becomes the Maya, or the tempting and deceitful serpent on our plane. So you see this idea of knowledge or wisdom runs through every plane, and it can represent the state of consciousness of every plane. So these deceitful serpents are really just mirroring the state of consciousness of these lower planes. So any thoughts or questions about this? Okay. Could we get a reader for this next? segment, please.
Regina, can you read that for us, please?
Sure. The Spirit of God moving on chaos was symbolized by every nation in the shape of a fiery serpent breathing fire and light upon the primordial waters, until it had incubated cosmic matter and made it assume the annular shape of a serpent with its tail in its mouth, which symbolizes not only eternity and infinitude, but also the globular shape of all the bodies formed within the universe from that fiery mist. The universe, as well as the earth and man, cast off periodically, serpent-like, their old skins, to assume new ones after a time of rest. The serpent is surely a not less graceful or a more unpoetical image than the caterpillar and chrysalis, from which springs the butterfly, the Greek emblem of Psyche, the human soul.
Thank you. So the Spirit of God moving on chaos again takes us back to verse 2. The darkness that breathes over the slumbering waters of life. Let's take a look at the, there's so many references to serpent and dragons here that I think it warrants a trip to the Theosophical Glossary. So let's take a look at this entry on serpent. Can we get a reader for this section? Actually, let's divide this in two. First two paragraphs and the last three paragraphs.
Okay. Lynn, can you read the first part of it? And Martha, can you read the second part of it, please?
Serpent, one of the most fundamental and prolific symbols of the mystery language. Its most basic meaning is of the eternal, alternating cyclic motion during cosmic manifestation. For motion, which to the physicist and the philosopher alike seems an abstraction, is for the ancient wisdom a primordial principle or axiom of the same order as space and time existing per se. Never does motion cease utterly, and even during cosmic pralaya. This circular motion, compounding itself into spirals, helixes, and vortices, is the builder of worlds, bringing together the scattered elements of chaos. Motion per se is essential cosmic intelligence. This circular motion, returning upon itself like a serpent swallowing its tail, represents the cycles of time. This conscious energy in spiral swirls through all the planes of cosmos as Fohat and his innumerable suns, the cosmic energies and forces fundamentally intelligent, operating in every scale or grade of matter. The caduceus of Hermes, twin serpents wound about a staff, represents cosmically the mighty drama of evolution in its twin aspects, the staff or tree standing for the structural aspect, the serpent for the phohatic forces that animate the structure.
Thank you, Lynn.
Serpent is characteristically a dual symbol. In the beginnings of creation, two poles were emanated, spirit and matter, and forthwith began interaction between the downward forces of the one and the upward forces of the other. Hermes, Mercury, intelligence, may represent a sage or a thief. The serpentine wisdom may work in every plane of materiality. The perverse will of Cacodemon, of Ophis, and Ophiomorphos.
Martha?
Pardon? Yes.
You skipped a line.
Oh, I skipped a line, I'm sorry. The perverse will of man may turn natural forces to evil purposes, and thus we speak of the good serpent and the bad, Levagathodaemon and Cacodemon, of Ophis and Ophiomorphos. A serpent can be a sage or a sorcerer. The seven sacred planets, or again the seven human principles, form a serpent, that often juxtaposed with the sun and moon as making a triad. One form of this spiraling conscious energy, when manifesting in man, is Kundalini Sakti, the serpentine power, which in the ordinary person today lies relatively sleeping and performing merely automatic vital functions, but when aroused can either waft to sublime heights of vision and power or blast like a lightning stroke. The power which a serpent has of casting its old skin is analogous to what the earth does at the commencement of each round, and to the clothing of the human jiva with a new body when it enters the womb. Again, the astral light is called a serpent. Its lowest strata are dangerous and deceptive, while it extends through all planes up to the highest akasa, the vehicle of divine wisdom.
Thank you, Martha. So any thoughts or questions about this definition? You know, we see that there's many meanings to the idea of a serpent, but that they are interconnected. In fact, one of the main meanings of serpent is this interconnection through a unified energy of various levels, right? For instance, it represents the seven, what does she call it? The 7 stages of human development. That's not the right word, but anyway. And this serpent is that interconnection, just like the Kundalini connects the chakras, the 7 chakras, on its way to enlightenment. So there is a quality of unity that it comes through the serpent. The phrase motion per se is essential cosmic intelligence, which I've highlighted here, takes us back to the poem and the idea that pre-cosmic ideation and motion are one and the same. Here we learn that this cosmic intelligence is frequently represented by a serpent or dragon. This is why Ananta, the first extension into manifestation of pre-cosmic ideation, substands Vishnu, thus sustaining the sustainer. In this context, Ananta is the personified intent of universal mind, the very first conditioning aspect of chaos. It is the causal aspect of motion and thus of cyclic activity. So the nature of motion, you know, is not moving from point A to B. It's this idea of manas, or mahat on higher levels, right? Universal mind on the highest levels. Okay, back to the commentary. Can we get a reader for this segment, please?
Julia, can you read that for us?
The dragon was also the symbol of the Logos with the Egyptians, as with the Gnostics. In the book of Hermes, Pymander, the oldest and most spiritual of the Logi of the Western continent, appears to Hermes in the shape of a fiery dragon of light, fire, and flame. Pymander, the thought divine personified, says, "The light is me. I am the Nu, the mind, or Manu. I am thy God, and I am far older than the human principle which escapes from the shadow, darkness, or the concealed deity. I am the germ of thought, the resplendent word, the Son of God. All that thus sees and hears in thee is the verbum of the Master. It is the thought, Mahat, which is God, the Father."
Wonderful quote from Pymander. Any thoughts or questions about this? In the last sentence, HPB links Mahat with the verbum or word, thus suggesting that the word is a vehicle for divine thought. rather than just a word, which of course brings with it divine presence. This is why sequential revelation of the word is such an important part of initiation. Here's Thoth, recording the words of the divine Pymander, pictured on the right. This is the quote that we just read. Hermes and his vision of the Pymander, and possibly a more esoteric version of Pymander, or Poimandres. This was long thought to, Pymander was long thought to mean man shepherd, but it's actually derived from the Egyptian phrase Peme Nte Re, meaning knowledge of Re. Re is the solar logos depicted on Thoth's crown, along with the crescent moon, sun and moon, just as it appeared in Hermes' vision. So you get the cultural interconnection here. And of course, sun and moon represent spirit and matter. Peme Nte Re. Of course, we don't really know how the Egyptians pronounced their words because their vowels were omitted in the hieroglyphs. Okay, let's read the footnote.
Scott has his hand up.
Yeah, Scott.
I was just going to draw attention to back, please, the quote.
Oh, there's the quote.
Yeah, that's fine. Is that the one? Has no, back one more. Yeah, and the highlighted, the third line of the highlight at the bottom there, the shape of a fire dragon of light, fire, and flame, representing the three manifestations of fire at three different levels: Father, Mother, Son, flame. The physical manifestation of the flame. Light to fire, down to flame.
Yeah, good point. Right, this is a specific, Scott is pointing out a specific nomenclature here. Light, fire, and flame. It's not just three descriptive words, but is very specific to the three principles. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. What does he say? The light is me, right? So that's that highest level, and then that manifests as in the intermediate principle as fire, and then the flame is the physical manifestation. Yeah, good eye to catch that. Good, I missed that. Anyone else? Any thoughts?
Well, Julia's hand is back up again. Hi, Julia. I'm not so sure you and I aren't working at cross purposes here. Your hand is up right now. Did you have a question?
No, my hand is down when I'm looking at this.
You're looking at it wrong.
It's a profound metaphor, that little hand symbol, right? It's suggesting what it will be when you push it, rather than what it actually is, right? It thinks in terms of the future. If you push it, it will then become what it symbolizes, which is like totally weird, but that's how it is. So actually, all you have to do, Julie, is click it when you want your hand up, and then leave it alone, because BL will put your hand back down when you're done.
Right, and I'm going to put it down right now, which is what I've been doing other times, okay? That's why it keeps going up and down, is because I've been working with you on that.
Thank you. Thanks for the explanation. The mystery is revealed.
Right. Okay, and Martha has her hand up, so.
Yes.
Thank you for, could we stay with Scott's, the pointing out that you clarified with light, fire, and flame as more significant than simple descriptions. because the appearance is a kind of reversal from the way we think of the light is the me, is often thought of in esoteric wisdom as revelation, divine intelligence, and the fire of Agni is, you know, often the father principle, and then the flame is manifestation. There seems to be fluidity that isn't quite the same as how we think of these things. I'm thinking, if you talk a little bit more, Francis and Scott, that there will be this is a non-structural way of thinking, I know, but I have a feeling that there's more to be said about them, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, when Scott and I talk, we usually figure out the mysteries of the universe. So
Thank you.
And you're welcome to join in, especially to tell us that we're wrong. I totally get what you're saying, because we have, for instance, the sea of fire, right, which is on the highest subplane of the highest plane in the cosmic physical plane, and also describes the entire first subplane, right? So there's that fire. If it wasn't for the fact that Pymander says the light is me, but see, even that is not, I wouldn't say is definitive, because you could say that which I emanate is also me, right? So even the lowest aspect is me, right? Another argument for this would be the fact that that esoterically it's almost always listed from above down. When you get a teaching like this, they don't tend to list it from the bottom up, right? But to say that there is an ambiguity to it is definite. But Scott, do you have any thoughts on this?
Not really.
No, there's you know, for instance, I'm remembering in DK, and I wish I could pull the quote out, but the idea that the flame is a final and absolute reality rather than the physical manifestation, you know, but I can't pull it up. It's only buried somewhere in my memory banks there. But I could see.
It's lovely. I wasn't looking for an answer either. It was just staying for a minute on the very ambiguity itself, because sometimes the Western mind gets rather definitive, and that it's the relationship, or it's the unity of the three elements that strike me as interesting, where the attributes are kind of interchangeable with mother, father, son concepts.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up too, because these are metaphors for the mental plane, right? And the mentality, or that which is of mind, what's called here the new, right? That's a term used a lot by the Pythagoreans. And so you could see them also as aspects of higher and lower mind, as well as that which is even causal to higher mind, right? So, you know, ultimately they're metaphorical elements for mind, and we have to keep that in mind. Thanks, Martha, for bringing that up.
Thank you.
And Antonella has her hand up.
Yeah, Antonella.
Yeah, me too. I remember the comparison between fire and flame in Treatise of Cosmic Fire. So I just found now two quotes very interesting that I can read and then copy and paste in the section of questions. So in the stanzas number 7, it is said, "The time is come, that time for which we wait. let the flame become the fire, and let the light shine forth. So also here, it could be, yes, understood that the light is the third aspect. It seems to me. And, and another, electric fire or the logoic flame divine. This flame is the distinguishing mark of our logos, and it is that which differentiates him from all other logoi. It is his dominant characteristic and the sign of his place in cosmic evolution. And there was also the solar fire as second aspect, and of course the fire by friction as the third aspect. So here again, the flame seems referred to the first aspect.
Yeah, and you know, I think that for me, that's definitive. That makes me want to switch the order here. I think by when he says here, the light is me, I think what he's saying is that that outer aspect is me, is also me, you could say, right? So the path to me is from light to fire to flame, rather than as we're reading it. So yeah, I'm now convinced at that level. Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's right. And also in tabulation one, sorry if I just, so the three fires, the fire friction is defined as internal, the second solar fire as of mind, fire of mind, and the first electric fire is defined again, divine flame. So.
Oh, it's described as divine flame. Well, there we have it.
Yeah, again.
So the three fires, but the third divine flame. Yeah. Yeah, I knew I remembered something along that line. Thank you, Nella. That's useful.
Sure.
Great. I encourage you all to participate. It's makes for a much more interesting webinar. So if you ever have a point, please don't be shy. If you have something to say, jump forward and share with everyone.
Scott would like to share with everyone.
Okay.
I'm still going back to championing the other way of looking at that triplicity, and going particularly with the first quote that the person read there, talking about the flame becoming the fire and giving off the light is the return. We are the flames. We need to find the fire and return to the light. I think the order is correct. From the bottom up, as it were.
Okay. We can arm wrestle next time we meet.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the way to really become familiar with the qualities of this, is to explore the possibilities here. So.
Antonella has given us the quote, and what I'm going to try and do is see if I can paste it into the chat box, because no one else can see the questions except the staff here. So let me see if I'm smart enough to be able to do that so everybody can get the quote. And Martha says, Scott, bottom up, top down, aren't we saying the same?
Well, yes and no. It's, you know, determining the causal direction. Of course, you know, first of all, we're dealing with English. You know, if these were Sanskrit terms, there'd be no question, right? But all three of these words in English are never used in common parlance to represent anything like what we're choosing to have them represent. So it's really what you decide that they are. Well, the only place you can go for further information is these great sources like HPB and DK. They decide which it is and what it is, right? And you know, you can argue that there's some intrinsic quality to each of those words, but the words in English certainly were never created to describe these high realities. I love this this definition of where am I here? Let me find it again. Yeah, knowledge of the solar logos is the name for this being taught, you know, which there's just the fact that he's crowned with sun and moon and is writing down the word. It just shows the scope of this stage of consciousness of this great God. You know, in Egypt, these personifications it was recognized by the Egyptians that they were personifications of stages of being or great levels of awareness, you know, not as some kind of entity that is static in some way, right? Okay, that's one of the reasons they had human bodies, right? Because it's the head and the crown and what they're holding that describe what they're actually representing. Okay, anything else? Let's see. Let's get back to the commentary. Could we get a reader for starting with the dragon?
There we go. Antonella, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. So we have already read that play.
Oh, did we read this?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I have.
Is there any fine? Thank you.
The footnote. I have.
No, it's the footnote.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Which is it references the term God the Father.
Yeah.
At the very end there. Yeah.
By God the Father, the seventh principle in man and cosmos are here unmistakably meant. This principle being inseparable in its essence and nature from the seventh cosmic principle. In one sense, it is the Logos of the Greeks and the Avalokitesvara of the esoteric Buddhists.
Yeah, thank you. In the lower left is a Mesopotamian version of the divine Pymander, combining the father aspect, wings representing motion, and the dragon's tail, all one with the natural world. You know, all these concepts substand the natural world, right? And the Mesopotamians understood that. In the above right, the agathodaemon, the higher serpent potency of the Gnostics, is a more esoteric version. Notice the union of the two streams, spirit and matter, represented by the two tails. Though traditionally a rooster, which heralds the dawn, this head looks to me more like a dog's head, universal symbol of the star Sirius. So there's some mystery there. Okay, continuing on with HBB's commentary on section D. The first statement is a continuation of the quote from the Egyptian divine Pymander that we were just reading. So could we get a reader for that, please?
Lynn, can you read that for us, please?
The celestial ocean, the aether, is the breath of the Father, the life-giving principle, the Mother, the Holy Spirit. For these are not separated, and their union is life. Here we find the unmistakable echo of the archaic secret doctrine now expanded. Only the latter does not place at the head of the evolution of life the Father, who comes third and is the Son of the Mother, but the eternal and ceaseless breath of the All.
Excellent. So, any thoughts or questions about this segment? Here, the old commentary identifies the breath of the Father as itself being the Mother. That's a little different than what we've read in the past. From which springs the Son, who becomes the new Father, right? First Vishnu, which is Oya Ohu the elder, then Brahma as male creator, who is Oya Ohu the younger. Next up, can we have a reader for this?
Okay. Michael, can you read that for us? You're self-muted. Well, that didn't work. Okay.
Are we looking from understanding? Is that where we're starting?
Yeah, it's no starting with the Mahat.
Oh, the Mahat. The Mahat understanding use a universal mind, thought, etc. before it manifests itself as Brahma or Siva, appears as Vishnu, said Sankasara, page 16. Hence, Mahat has several aspects, just as the Logos has. Mahat is called the Lord in the primary creation and is, in this sense, universal cognition of thought divine. But that Mahat, which was first produced, is afterwards called egoism, when it is born as I. That is said to be the second creation. Agnujita, chapter 26. And the translator, an able and learned Brahmin, not a European Orientalist, explains in a footnote 6, i.e., when Mahat develops into the feeling of self-consciousness, I, then it assumes the name of egoism, which translated into our esoteric phraseology means when Mahat is transformed into the human manas, or even that of finite gods, and becomes aham ship.
Okay, any thoughts or questions about this? Aham is the I principle, right? So aham ship is the personality, or any singularity, you could say. So we're told that Mahat, or universal mind, manifests as Vishnu before it appears as Brahma or Shiva. In the laws of Manu, which appear later in the SD, we find this quote: removing the darkness, the self-existent Lord, Vishnu, Narayana, etc., becoming manifest and, quote, wishing to produce beings from his essence, created in the beginning water alone. In that he cast seed. That became a golden egg. So, you're going to recognize this from the earlier verses of this stanza, right? So Vishnu is another name for Narayana, the first and self-existent Lord, which that's the darkness that breathes over the deep. You also find this in Genesis, right? The unmoved mover of the Greeks. Perhaps Vishnu's primacy has to do with the fact that we live in a second-rate solar system. For among Vishnu's attributes are, quote, the embodiment of sattva guna, the quality of mercy and goodness, which displays itself as the preserving power in the self-existent, all-pervading spirit. The rest of HPB's commentary describes the descent of Mahat until the mind principle, quote, develops into the feeling of self-consciousness and thus becoming manas, the defining quality of egoism. So, you have this quality of Mahat / manas is represented by a dragon. It's the principle of mind, all the way from pre-cosmic ideation, universal mind, Mahat, manas. And it's all represented as a dragon because it's all interlinked, right? And you have the higher and the lower dragon because this quality of manas exists even in the separated personality, which is described here as ahamship, right? So, any questions? Any thoughts about this? Okay, it's worth the detour. Let's take a look at this definition of Mahat. It's central. This whole idea of dragons and universal mind and Mahat is central to these verses. So it's worth the time. Can we get a reader for this, please?
Scott, will you please?
Yeah, go for it, Scott.
I see a Masonic root here. Mahat, Sanskrit. Mahat, from the verbal root ma, to be great. The great, cosmic mind or intelligence. The basis and fundamental cause of the intelligent operations in and of nature, considered as an organism. Blavatsky called it the first product of pradhana, the firstborn of the logos, universal mind limited by manvantaric duration, the cosmic noumenon of matter, the one impersonal architect of the universe, the great manvantaric principle of intelligence, the third logos, and the divine mind in active operation. Oh, there's a sentence. Eternal in its essence and periodical in its manifestations, Mahat combines the ideal plans and prototypes of all beings and things in the manifested objective and subjective world. In another sense, it is the entire aggregate of the Dhyanic Kohanic host, and therefore the source of the active organic cosmic intelligence controlling and directing the operations of Fohat. It is likewise the direct source of the Manasaputras, the class of the Dhyani Kohanic host. In Brahmanical philosophy, Mahat is the father-mother of Manas. In Sankhya philosophy, it corresponds to cosmic buddhi or Mahabuddhi, and it is called the first of the 7 prakritis, or productive creation, the other 6 being ahamkara and the 5 tanmatras. When a ray from Mahat expresses itself as the human manas, or even as the monastic attribute of the finite gods, it then, because of surrounding Maya, involves the quality of egoity or ahamship. Thus it is said that the great tree of life is Parabrahman as its seed, Mahat as its trunk, and Ahamkara as its spreading branches.
And of course, this is a reversed tree with Ahamkara, which means that the stage of the separated self at the lowest aspect. Okay, thanks, Scott. Any thoughts about this definition? Hopefully this helps flesh out this idea of Mahat. So to continue, can we get a reader, please?
Regina, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Why it is called the Mahat of the second creation, or the 9th, that of the Kumara in Vishnu Purana, will be explained in Book 2. The sea of fire is then the super-astral noumenal light, the first radiation from the root, the Mula Prakriti, the undifferentiated cosmic substance, which becomes astral matter. It is also called the fiery serpent, as above described.
Thank you. So this statement is a bit confusing. After her reference to Book 2, HPB describes a noumenal condition that precedes the second creation, wherein Mahat becomes Manas, tracing the descent from the sea of fire, which is Mula Prakriti, the super-astral noumenal light, and the first radiation from the root. This root is Oyahu, the elder, / Narayana / Vishnu. From this noumenal light comes astral substance or matter. Next up. Actually, you could just continue reading. That was a short read, if you would, please.
If the student bears in mind that there is but one universal element, which is infinite, unborn, and undying, and that all the rest, as in the world of phenomena, are but so many various differentiated aspects and transformations, correlations they're now called, of that one, from cosmical down to microcosmical effects, from superhuman down to human and subhuman kingdoms, the totality, in short, of objective existence, then the first and chief difficulty will disappear and occult cosmology may be mastered.
So thoughts or questions on this? Her statement seems to acknowledge the difficulty of tracing the descent of spirit into matter, you know, and all the various routes and manifestations that it takes. Let's take a footnote. Let's take a look at the footnote, which references the occult cosmology. I'll read it. It's short. In the Egyptian, as in the Indian theogony, there was a concealed deity, the one, and the creative androgynous god. Thus, Shu is the god of creation, and Osiris is, in his original primary form, the god whose name is unknown. See Mariette, Abydos 2, etc., etc. Here are Osiris and Shu, the Egyptian concealed and manifest deities, respectively. So,
Martha has her hand up.
yes, Martha.
So, I just wanted to observe the amazing correlations between this and what would be called comparative religion, and I have a tremendous respect for the specificity of what you're laying out in terms of the notion of the one and the many. And so I've got two questions. One is that does it matter the direction in which the two deities that were just in the prior picture, it seems to be that the direction to the, is that considered to the left or to the right? And then the other part is the coloration and the notion of androgyny, which I think is kind of a Western term. You know, I'm beginning to realize how messed up we are with what you had said earlier, Francis. We have to use English language, and it's so Germanic in some ways. It's so different from what the Sanskrit was about. Just observations. Thank you.
Yeah, the inferences. In terms of which direction they're facing, I have no doubt that it is of fundamental import. If you were to ask an Egyptian sage, you know, he would say, "What are you, 5 years old?" You know, because this is like fundamental. However, I don't know the answer to you know, in terms of direction facing, meaning. You know, I can't say to you that facing one direction means one thing or another. I think the coloration is, you know, the metaphor is clear here to say in these two, you know, the one on the right, and of course these are modern transferences from tomb paintings or where these have been found more than once in hieroglyphs. But, you know, this flesh-colored, brown-colored on the right suggests identification or the manifested form of the higher god, which is of a color kind of like the blue of the Hindus, which is reserved for the highest gods, right? And beyond that, you know, green, as we know in theosophy, is the third principle, the third ray, I should say. But you know, one of the fundamentals. But beyond that, I have not explored the specific nature of the coloration. If anybody, among us knows more than I do about this, please chime in. That'd be useful, interesting to know. In terms of the specificity, well, that's why we're drawn to theosophy, is because it really peels back the outer layers and allows us at least some look into the causal elements and actually gets into descriptions of these causal levels, and which is interesting and exciting because it opens up the intuition and it allows our lower mind to stretch into the higher realms. So thank you, Martha. Okay, next up. Can we get a reader for this?
Martha, can you read that for us, please? You're self-muted. Thank you.
All the Kabbalists and occultists, Eastern and Western, recognize the identity of Father-Mother with primordial, ether or akasa, astral light, and B, its homogeneity before the evolution of the sun, cosmically Fohat, for it is cosmic electricity. Fohat hardens and scatters the seven brothers, Book 3, Dzyan, which means that the primordial electric entity for the Eastern occultists insists that electricity is an entity, electrifies into life, and separates primordial stuff or pregenetic matter into atoms, themselves the source of all life and consciousness.
Thank you, Martha. Any thoughts about this? Here, HPB restates that Father-Mother, which is ether and akasha, alive in Mahat, was homogeneous. Differentiation began as a result of the activities of Fohat, the sun, who, quote, hardens, meaning separates into form, the seven brothers, which are the seven ray lives. So you can see how primordial this Fohatic force is. In fact, I'd like to, Fohat's often represented also as serpent power. That's the caduceus that, with the two serpents, that's Fohatic potency. So let's take a look at the Theosophical Glossary entry on Fohat. I think we looked at this a couple of webinars ago, but I'd like to revisit it. Could we get a reader, please?
Michael, can you read that for us, please? You're self-mute. There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Fohat, Tibetan, Mongolian, from Mon, Fo, Buddha, Buddhi, cosmic life or vitality, bipolar cosmic vital electricity, equivalent to the light of the Logos, Diva Pratatria, Eros, the fiery whirlwind, etc. As the bridge between spirit and matter, Fohat is the collectivity of intelligent forces through which cosmic ideation impresses itself upon substance, thus forming the various worlds of manifestation. In the manifested universe, it is that occult, electric, vital power which, under the will of the creative Logos, unites and brings together all forms, giving them the first impulse, which becomes in time law. Fohat becomes the propelling force, the active power which causes the one to become two and three. Then Fohat is transformed into that force which brings together the elemental atoms and makes them aggregate and combine. SD 1, verse 109. Fohat is ever present and active from the primordial beginnings of a Manvantara to its last end, nor does it then actually pass out of existence, but becomes quiescent or latent, as it were, sleeping or dormant during the cosmic pralaya.
Any thoughts about this? questions? Particularly relevant to the commentary is, as the bridge between spirit and matter, Fohat is the collectivity of intelligent forces through which cosmic ideation impresses itself upon substance, thus forming the various worlds of manifestation. So it's this bridging quality, it's the means by which spirit bridges to matter through the impressing of the Mahatic force.
We have a couple of hands up, Martha and then Michael.
I just wanted to ask, is Fohat equivalent then to the collective soul or to heavenly man? And feel free to take the other question too.
It's more universally prevalent than that. You could say it is the active energetic bridge as a energetic vital electrical substance, you could say, that relates all the planes and subplanes one to another, right? So it extends in both directions beyond soul, into, you could say that Ananta, remember the couch of Vishnu, that seven-headed snake, is in itself Fohatic, because it has bridged from the absolute and forms the means by which Vishnu, or that point of tension from which Vishnu can then manifest Brahma. That's before the soul aspect is even formed. And then on the extreme other end of the stage, you have the physical realm. Fohat also holds the atoms of substance together, right?
Thank you.
So, yeah. Any other questions, Martha, about
that? Michael, go ahead.
Yes, Francis, as you've been reading all this, certain thoughts have been coalescing for me here. Mm-hmm. And when you start off with the light, fire, and flame, I'm reminded of, in Dante, the journey from heaven through purgatory into heaven. Mm-hmm. And so that gets us thinking about the journey of the soul. And as we crossed over these words, Ophimorphos and Ophis, I'm reminded of the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent wrestler.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this is interesting, isn't it, how they connect?
Yeah.
I read something interesting once by Robert Hand, how he connected the serpent of Ophiuchus with a sine wave, and he connected it with energy.
Yep.
And so I'm thinking about this, and the sine wave is basically a linear representation of a circular thing, like from an electrical generator, for example.
Right.
And the same idea transfers over to this serpent. And as we see in the Codiceus, this movement, this spiraling, is also a picture of a journey across a sphere. The same as we were starting on the bottom of the celestial sphere, or perhaps the top. And so if we start from the bottom, and then the energy of Draco, the dragon at the North Pole, is perhaps traveling down this sphere into manifestation. And then as we are reaching up to reunify with that. So anyway, I just wanted to share those thoughts.
Yeah, actually, you're anticipating something that's coming up. It's actually described in something of what you've said is described in what's coming. But yeah, I think that if sine waves had been available to the ancients, they would have, without question, associated them with this serpent potency, because it's the oscillation between the poles. And what's coming up next is directly addresses this. So hold on to your coattails, and we'll be looking at. In fact, it's it's exactly the very next thing. So
okay, very good.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, here we are. Can we get a reader for this?
Antonella, can you read that for us, please? Oops.
There exists a universal agent unique of all forms and of life that is called Od, Ob, and Aur, active and passive, positive and negative, like day and night. It is the first light in creation, Eliphas Levi's Kabbalah, the first light of the primordial Elohim, the Adam, male and female, or scientifically electricity and life.
Thank you, Antonella. Let's go right, in fact, keep reading, go right onto the footnote.
Okay. Od is the pure life-giving light, or magnetic fluid. Ob, the messenger of death, used by the sorcerers, the nefarious evil fluid. Aur is the synthesis of the two, astral light proper. Can the philologists tell why Od, a term used by Reichenbach to denominate the vital fluid, is also a Tibetan word meaning light, brightness, radiancy? It equally means sky in an occult sense. Whence the root of the word? Akasha is not quite ether, but far higher than that, as will be shown.
Thanks, Antonella.
Thanks.
So any thoughts and questions? See, this Od, Ob, and Aur are the positive and negative aspects of Fohat, which we're told exist in at least 7 divisions, if you think in terms of the cosmic planes or the cosmic physical subplanes, often described as the 7 brothers. The pure life-giving light of Od, Od, is the positive electric pole of Fohatic energy. Ob, the negative pole, which when isolated becomes the, quote, nefarious evil fluid. In Eliphas Levi's work, Aur signifies light, brilliance, and hence revelation and the light of initiation. Okay, any thoughts or questions about this? Sorcerers, and you could say, occult magicians working on both sides of the line, the white magicians and black, work directly with these energies, these Ob and Od energies, either, accentuating one or bringing forth these potencies. This is pure occult science. Okay, any questions about this idea? If you think of the 2 sides of a caduceus, you could see them as the Ob and Od elements. Be one way of looking at it. Okay. Then on to the C section of the commentary on verse 7, which references, behold him lifting the veil and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones, stars, and turns the upper spaces into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested element into the great waters. So, could we get a reader for the beginning of this commentary?
Carrie, can you read that for us, please?
Okay. The ancients represented it by a serpent, for Fohat hisses as he glides hither and thither in zigzags. The Kabbalah figures it with the Hebrew letter Teth, whose symbol is the serpent, which played such a prominent part in the mysteries. Its universal value is 9, for it is the 9th letter of the alphabet, and the 9th door of the 50 portals,
or gateways that lead to the concealed mysteries of being. It is the magical agent par excellence and designates in Hermetic philosophy life infused into primordial matter, the essence that composes all things and the spirit that determines their form.
Thank you, Gary. So any thoughts or questions about this segment? The it of the first sentence is Fohat. It doesn't make it clear there. The universal agent, unique of all forms and of life of the previous paragraph. In the Theosophical Glossary's definition of Fohat that we just read, we see that Fohat is bipolar cosmic vital electricity. We can surmise that this polarity is Od and Ob. Teth, the serpent power of Fohat, is associated with Leo, whose symbol is obviously serpentine. Leo is associated with the 8th arcanum of the Tarot, but Virgo, the 9th arcanum, remember Teth is the 9th Hebrew letter, is represented here as the virgin who is demonstrating the serpent power of Teth through an inner control over the outer power of the lion. We see in this arcanum the symbolism of an ancient time when Leo and Virgo were one sign. We see the same idea illustrated by the Hindu goddess Simhavahini, Durga, demonstrating the control of spirit over the form aspect. 9 is the number of initiation, and in a related way, the number of completion, for 9 represents all manifestation, as illustrated by the 9 manifest sephira in the Tree of Life. Only Kether, the one at the top, is not of the manifested realm. No surprise that Fohat is connected with 9, as Fohat is the energy that initiates manifestation and, quotes, unites and brings together all forms. So these connecting bars in the Tree of Life are inherently Fohatic. Okay, finding info on the 50 portals or gateways that lead to the concealed mysteries of being was an interesting journey. First, in a treatise on white magic, DK tells us that 50 is the number of the perfected personality, for 5 is the number of man, and 10 is that of perfection. For the 50 petals, we'll turn to 2 more quotes from DK. Can we get a reader for these 2 quotes?
Lynn, can you read those for us, please?
We have generated a term we call the ether. Occultly speaking, this is a modern way of expressing the waters of space, which are the waters of desire in which we are immersed. It is in constant ebb and flux and is the stream of life constituted of 49 types of energy, which pours through the cosmic egoic lotus and radiating forth from it, feeds with its measure of sustenance the form, solar, planetary, or human, for which it is responsible. Treatise on White Magic 275. These 49 types of energy are the final differentiation of the 49 fires prior to their union with the fire of Eros. Thus, it is expressed by HPV. Treatise on Cosmic Fire 533.
Thank you. Okay. So, Eros, HPV tells us, is esoterically the third person in the primeval trinity, or the sum total of the form aspect. So, possibly, this is just a hypothesis, mastery of each of the 49 types of energy which pour through the egoic lotus represents a symbolic portal that we pass through, with the 50th of the 50 portals being, quote, union with the fire of Eros, thus achieving the perfected human condition represented by the number 50. So, finally we have this beautiful description of Fohat. It is the magical agent par excellence and designates in Hermetic philosophy life infused into primordial matter, the essence that composes all things, and the spirit that determines their form. So you can see the extraordinary scope of this concept of Fohat. If you want to carry away, if you want to carry away a line to describe Fohat, this idea of life infused into primordial matter wouldn't be a bad one. So thoughts or questions on anything in this section?
Scott's got his hand up. Go ahead, Scott.
I'm wondering if we can apply this 49 plus 1 unifier, or that which stands beyond, first to the cosmic physical plane as a unit, and looking then at the cosmic astral as the 50th, or and at any rate apply to the cosmic physical plane, and then step it up one more to all 7 cosmic planes, to something beyond, which is more Fohatic.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think, however, that would be, see, are we in this? Yeah, this is the quote that includes that. I don't think that would apply to the human process of, unless we extend that to 9 initiations, right? Then the 9th door of the 50 portals, might lead to those exalted heights. But for instance, the 49, let's get back to those quotes. The 49 types of energy that are represented by the petals of the egoic lotus wouldn't have that kind of breadth. But I'm with you on that 50 being the unifying singularity that you can add to the 49. Even though I combed for the AAB works looking for a specific reference to that. This is as close as I got. This idea of the union of the fire of Eros. But we can see that you could actually, if Eros is in fact the 3rd principle, you could see that the entire cosmic physical plane could, on a cosmic level, fall under that idea of it being the 3rd principle, or in total the fires of Eros. So yes, I think so. When you get to the 50 of the entire cosmic 7 planes, then I think you're moving from manifestation to pralaya.
Mm-hmm.
I would think. Anyone else?
Yes, Antonella has her hand up. Go ahead, please, Antonella.
Yes, I was thinking that from the astronomical key or the mysteries, we have the cycle between Sirius A and Sirius B, which is exactly 50 terrestrial years.
Right.
And yes, so Sirius is also Isis, and there is like the vehicle of Orion, Osiris. So I was thinking just these numbers and the astronomical cycles related to Sirius, and the fact also that from one side of the universe or the galactic direction, we have Osiris and Sirius from one side, so Osiris and Isis, and from the on the other side we have the direction to the galactic center, which is held by the Scorpion and Sagittarius, but also by Ophiuchus, so this bearer of the serpent. So again, the names, the deities, the constellations reveal the source of the different kind of Fohat, or the energy, cosmic energy, cosmic electricity, and it's fascinating.
It is. It's like we have the nouns, we need the verbs, right? Just what does that mean?
Yeah.
Especially because Sirius is so connected with the Blue Lodge, you know, the hierarchical lodge.
Yeah.
And so you know that that is directly connected with these 50 portals. You just have to wonder if that cycle between A and B, Sirius A and B, isn't involved, you know. Just an interesting side note, the Dogons, you know about them, about
yes.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go.
Yeah, they, you know, even in ancient times, or I should say at least hundreds of years ago, the Dogons knew about Sirius A and B. Well, Sirius B, you need a serious telescope to see Sirius B, right? And so clearly that came down to them, not through observation in the skies, but through inner sight, you know, and some master among them revealing that to them.
Yeah.
But it is to this day a major part of their spiritual life.
And they knew also of a Sirius C, which is not evident. So Sirius A and B, and then a Sirius C. Anyway, also the mysteries, Egyptian mysteries, we know that the direction to Sirius and Osiris were the two directions from the chamber of the queen and of the king. And the entrance of these poetic energies were coming from the Polaris of that time, which was Tuban in the dragon, and from Ursa Minor. So again, we have that north part of the heaven where we have the north ecliptic pole, which is like a head center. And then we have the destiny of the resurrected soul of the pharaoh, which goes to Sirius and Osiris, to the belt of Orion. So again, we know that this constellation, the two Ursa Major and Minor, as Decay suggests to call them, not Great Bear and Little Bear, and on the other side, this Osiris and Sirius are really the two poles of all our evolution.
Yeah. And they informed the initiation process in the Great Pyramid.
Yes.
Yeah. That was the means by which the energy came into that chamber, into both those chambers, right? Yeah. Thank you for that, Antonella. That's fascinating and relevant. Anyone else?
Yes. Go ahead, please, Karsten.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I read about Steiner says that Zarathustra is coming from Sirius, and he was the one who predicted that Christ will came later. So he was the first from Sirius, and he is very high. He also initiated the astrology and many other things. That's it. I want to.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, Sirius is, you know, a kind of cosmic Christ in its connection through Jupiter, which is a systemic Christ. What's the other planet that it's connected with? One of you esoteric astrologers that comes through. DK tells us the means by which we contact Sirius is through one of the planets in our solar system. But yes.
Yeah, it is Venus.
Venus.
Yes. So
okay.
Venus is to Isis, and Sirius as the Sun, or Jupiter also is to Osiris, Vulcan, and the Sun. Is our higher brother. Venus is like the feminine, the soul, the Sirius, and Venus. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So we have these cosmic relationships that reveal the line of the cosmic Christ here. Okay, well, I have a loud plane going overhead, which we never get here in the middle of the woods of northern New Mexico.
Nicholas adds via the synthesizing planets.
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
Via the synthesizing planets.
Oh, right. Via the synthesizing, yeah, Sirius via the synthesizing planets, which would be Uranus for the first aspect, first rays, Neptune for the second, and Saturn for the third. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, let's see, where are we? Have we read this? We haven't read this, I believe.
We did read what's on the screen, yes.
One more screen down. So, we haven't read this, right? This is where we are, right? I kind of lost track as we got into our conversation.
Okay, let me see if... Michael, can you read that for us, please?
But there are two secret hermetical operations, one spiritual, the other material, correlative, and forever united. Thou shalt separate the earth from the fire, the subtile from the solid, that which ascends from earth to heaven and descends again from heaven to earth. It, the subtle light, is the strong force of every force, for it conquers every, I think that word is subtle, every subtle thing.
Subtile is an old version of subtle.
Okay. Every subtle thing and penetrates into every solid. Thus the world formed. Hermes.
Any thoughts about this? These two hermetical operations. Perfectly illustrated by Hermes Caduceus. Demonstrates as one, the involutional arc, which through Fohat unites fire with earth, and two, evolution, which through initiation or natural evolution, this is where the term secret applies, separates the imprisoned fire from earth, spirit from matter. It's interesting to me that the term strong force is now used in physics, unknown in HPV's time in this context, to mean that force which binds subatomic particles together. We know this force, even the strong force of modern physicists, to be the work of Fohat. So it was appropriately, if not unconsciously, named such. Okay, on to the final commentary. I want to, even though we're just a little bit over time, I want to finish this because this will, with it, will finish all but our review of verse 7. So we could finish this final paragraph. A reader, please.
Julia, can you read that for us, please?
It was not Zeno alone, the founder of the Stoics, who taught that the universe evolves when its primary substance is transformed from the state of fire into that of air, then into water, etc. Heraclitus of Ephesus maintained that the one principle that underlies all phenomena in nature is fire. The intelligence that moves the universe is fire, and fire is intelligence. And while Anaximenes said the same of air, and Thales of Miletus 600 years BC of water, the esoteric doctrine reconciles all these philosophers by showing that each was right, the system of none was complete.
Thank you, Julia. Yeah. So any thoughts or questions about these ideas? Much of this will be familiar to those of you who have been attending my webinar series on Manly Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. And for that reason, I won't break out these philosophers individually here. Suffice it to reiterate HPB's statement that each of the great philosophers mentioned here had a piece of the puzzle, but none represented the full esoteric doctrine. Okay, the next stage is to move into revisiting the verse and analyzing it, and we'll save that for next time. So thank you all for attending. Could we get some dates? I think it's a while now. We have until December for the Secret Teaching of All Ages. What is that, the 1st? Or
yes, it is. It's the 1st of December. And then the next Secret Doctrine will be the 15th of December.
Okay, so I hope you'll join us. If you haven't tried the Secret Teaching of All Ages, it's going to be encompassing some very interesting chapters ahead of us. So you might think about joining us. But anyway, it's a real privilege to host these webinars, and I thank you all for attending. So until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.